Hi friends, Jackie Los here, also known as Junk Gal. Today we are going to be talking about selling in an antique booth. I recently retired from selling in antique booths and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So today's video will be a little bit of a vlog style video, and it will just be a frank discussion of what I've learned over the years, and hopefully some of that will help you if you're selling in an antique booth. And I also want to focus on the financial side of it, which no one really wants to talk about. It's hard to say, well, how much are you making? And so I want to talk about that as well. If you're interested in this kind of content, please stick around. So I have been selling antiques since 1999, although I've collected my whole life. I love the old look, the real antiques. That's what I decorate my home with. So I am going to focus now on purchasing antiques mainly for home decor. And I've always felt that having antiques around me makes me feel comforted. And I know that many of you will understand that. When I made the decision to give up my antique booth this last time, I knew that it would be my last booth. And which leads me into some of the tips that I want to share with you before, or maybe you're already selling and you're struggling, or you want to improve what you're already doing. The number one thing that I can tell you is that you need time. That is what I struggled with. You need to put in the time, because you basically, in all honesty, have a storefront. Even though it's within a store, you still have a storefront, and it needs to be maintained. Regardless of the traffic that comes in certain antique malls, there are people that regularly visit that mall. And if they see the same stuff there every time they visit, they will visit less. So that would be my number one tip, is you need to refresh. Most people say once a month. I say you need to refresh as often as you can. If you can get to your antique booth space at least once a week and at least fluff it, that is awesome. That tells the customer that you care, and also something that they may have missed the last time because you fluffed it. Fluffing meaning changing things around. Because you fluffed it, they will see it when they go the next time. So that is huge, and that's where I just could not do it. The antique mall where I was at, it was only 45 minutes away. However, life gets in the way. I still work, and it was a struggle to get out there and pick and find things. So that is when I made the decision that I needed to retire, because even though you're losing out on money because you can't maintain your store, you are also a reflection on the entire mall and the other vendors. And I always felt bad about that if I could not get there and change things out. So then that takes me to finding things to have in your space. When I owned an antique mall, I actually went out and picked. I did not go through the thrift stores. I didn't do a whole lot of estate sales, only because I had this thing where if someone came into my antique shop and they saw an item that they saw at Goodwill, I don't think I would not want to find that. So my husband and I, we went on the road many times. And the fun part of it is we got to play like the pickers on TV, and we would go out of state. We would travel to Ohio, to Kentucky, and Indiana, other places, so that we can bring back unique items for our space. And we had a sheet, which was really fun, that we would hand out. And it was wanted. And these are things that at the time, people who came into our mall were looking for in Wisconsin. So we would go out of state and we would find some of these things. And at the time, it's kind of fun to look at this sheet because it's been several years since I've had the antique mall. But some things on here, enamel bowls and granite ware, I could not sell those to save my life right now. Rugs, vintage linens, those still sell. Old tools, I have a thing for old tools, let me tell you. I love them because they're rusty and they're so easy to use in your home decor. Old doors and windows, yep, I still love them. Let's see what else was on here. Pyrex, not so much. And so that is another tip for you, is location. Pyrex might sell like crazy in Ohio, but it doesn't sell very well here, and it didn't sell well in my antique mall. Just, certain pieces. So location is something huge and something to keep in mind. If you're not selling, it could just be you don't have the right items for that location. And so you can't get frustrated about that. You just have to change things out. You can ask the antique mall owner, what sells here? Ask the other dealers, what sells here? It could be a matter of traffic. There's really not enough traffic within the mall for the sales to be there. So these are all questions you want to ask before you even go out buying things. Do your research, see what's hot, what are the trends in antiques. I always found if something could be utilized in a home or utilized on your property, that it was a sure thing to sell. I know that garden benches, I used to love to find those on the old farms. Things that people can use or repurpose. And so that you don't have to repurpose everything. You could be the end piece that someone could take home and repurpose themselves. So I always tried to stock my booth with old hardware, doorknobs, the old rusty bucket. I didn't do a whole lot except clean those items up. If it's rusty, I might put a coat of polyacrylic on it just to prevent any further rust. But I always tried to stock my booth with things that people could just take and repurpose themselves. That way, after you're done picking, you could just price the items and take them to your booth, and you don't have a lot of time into it. You want to save time, which saves you money, into these items. And some things, yes, some things will need a coat of paint. Some things you may want to reinforce with a nail or a screw, because you do want to make sure that if you have a back of a chair that's falling off, obviously you want to fix that. But for the most part, I tried to leave things the way that they were in the original state. And then if someone wanted to do something with that, then they could. I want to say too that I did, towards the end of my stint at my antique mall booth, I took in some things that I repurposed that I thought was hot. You know, you watch the videos and you make these things and give things new life. And I did take those to my space, and people did not want to pay the price that I had to put on it because of the time and materials. So that's something to keep in mind too. Maybe you just want to keep what you're picking natural. I do remember from when I owned an antique mall, I would have customers come in and they would be frustrated if they saw too much of the repurposed. If antiques is in your title, when people come in off of the road after seeing a billboard, because we did have a billboard, if they would come in and not see at least 75% antiques, you know, they were frustrated. They took the time to visit. So that's something to keep in mind too. Are you stocking your antique mall booth with at least 75% antiques? So that's just a tip. I know that many of the antique malls, in order to stay in business, have had to bring in the vendors that have the repurposed, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just feel like if I'm visiting an antique mall, I want to see some antiques because that's what I'm all about. But it's, you know, different for different people. This is just my opinion. This whole video is just how I feel about things. So I hope that that helps. Now I want to talk about pricing. Pricing your items. That is always a tough one. But I had a little sheet where I put on my sheet what makes something valuable. There's a number of factors contributing to make something valuable. The simplest way of thinking is to bear the CARD principle in mind. CARD. Number one is condition. An item in excellent condition will always be worth more than one in bad condition, right? Age. Antiques are typically over 100 years old. But this doesn't always mean something old will be valuable. A glass vase made last year may well be worth more than a Roman glass bottle. Rarity. Rare items can be valuable. However, C, desirability. And D, desirability. This relates to supply and demand. If an item is desirable to a large number of people, it is more likely to be worth more, particularly if demand outstrips supply. So that is kind of how I price things. I was never one to check eBay for every item that I was pricing. I kind of know how much I have into something, and so then I would say, okay, I need to get this much out of it to make a profit. That is how I price things, because you could spend hours on eBay researching and get nowhere. But you want to be able to price fast, and you will if you continue to do the antique mall booth. You will get faster at things. Some things I can look at and say, I better look that up, just in case. But for the most part, you go out picking, you get a pile of things, you bring it home, clean them up, get tags on them, and get them into your booth. That is pretty much the bottom line of it. And once you get that pattern down, you will be so much happier, and you won't have the anxiety of, oh my gosh, how much am I going to put on this? How much should I put on this? So there is that. And I hope that helps a little. Next, I want to talk about actually how much profit you're actually making in your antique booth. That I will take you to my computer and talk about that. I just wanted to show everyone this spreadsheet that I created, and it's based on Melissa Marro's formula that she shared in a video, and I have linked the video in the description box below, as well as her YouTube page. If you want to learn about staging and DIYs, you've got to check out her page. But this was a real eye-opener for me, which is why I wanted to share it with you. The formula helps you to understand how much you should be earning in sales in order for the antique mall where you're renting a space should only get no more than 25%. So, for example, if we take this 200, that's the rent that you're paying every month, and a commission of 10%, and then you'd want to include credit card fees there. You need to have sales of $1,333 every month in order for the antique mall to get no more than 25% of your sales. Now keep in mind, if you have sales of $1,333, that sounds awesome, right? But you have to take into account the products that you bought, your time, gas, and everything else that we kind of talked about earlier in the video. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. So if we do another example, let's say that your rent is $350 and the mall takes 15%. You would need to earn $3,500 in sales in order for the antique mall to get no more than 25% of your sales. So I hope I explained that correctly. If you're interested in this at all, please go check out Melissa's original video. But I put it in a spreadsheet so that I could test out some different months. And it really did help me, and it was a real eye-opener. So anyway, go check out her video, and I hope this was helpful to you. With that, there are some other things that to consider also when pricing your items. There is gas, paint, cleaner, all the tools that you need to repair something, tags, and we all become very frugal when we're doing these things. However, you need to add in those expenses. And then there's some other things to consider. Taxes. Do you do your own taxes? I used to use QuickBooks when I did that. Theft and breakage. It happens. So you take a loss on that. How about the items that don't sell? And then there's the months that you don't have any sales. And then you don't know how you're going to end up at the end of the year. So there's a lot of things to consider. And if you truly love it and it's just a hobby, then you don't have to worry about any of it. However, if you are in it for the passion as well as you want to make a profit, you really have to buckle down and treat it like a real business. And there's one other thing that I really want to talk about. Well, I'm sure there's a couple other things, but one thing to bear in mind as well, as you are picking, you have to have somewhere to store these things. And I've seen many people, they're renting storage units, and it takes up, maybe you take up a room in your home, and after a while it really takes a toll on you because you have all this stuff. So my tip is, if you're not in love with it yourself, you bought it to sell and it hasn't sold, then I suggest that you give it up and donate it or sell it for really cheap just to be rid of it. Because it can pile up, let me tell you. So over the years, I have learned I only keep the stuff that I really love. And I live in a 900 square foot home. So I don't have a lot of room for storage. So that is something else to consider. Where will I put all this stuff in addition to my tools, my paints, and all the other things? Something else to consider is wherever you're renting your booth, there are many factors which will make a difference in whether you have a profit or not. In the antique mall, how often are they open? Some malls are open 2 days a week. You have to ask yourself, do you really want your stuff sitting there if the mall is only open 2 days a week? And is there steady traffic there? That's something you have to talk to the antique mall owner about. How much traffic actually comes in? And we talked about this before, but what is selling? You want to know that. So some of you may say, well, Jackie, what will you do? My focus will be to still buy antiques. I love them. I will use them in my home, and I'll take you all along with me as I decorate my home, show you some things that I use. I'll show you how I implement and integrate these treasures into my home. I will also continue to pick and have some Facebook Live sales. Those are a lot of fun, and they don't cost anything except the price of the items. And that is a great way to continue to sell. And you're selling locally, so you have a pickup day. Perhaps you meet people at a big box store parking lot. I have had huge success selling things on Facebook Marketplace. I either leave things on my porch, or I won't be able to do that in the Wisconsin winter. But I've had great success with meeting people here at the home. As long as my husband is home, I don't mind that at all. And I will continue to share with all of you items that I will be repurposing and upgrading, giving new life. And I have some projects coming up. But I just wanted to let all of you know that I'm no longer selling in my antique mall booth, and the reason why: it's time for me to hang up that hat, take some pressure off, and really enjoy my antiques. So I hope you got something out of this video. I hope I answered some questions. If you have questions, feel free to comment below. Any struggles that you're having in your antique mall booth, I would love to help. Perhaps we could make this a series. So feel free to leave your questions below. I appreciate you watching this video. And until the next video, God bless.